There is a very specific silence that belongs to the unwanted. It isn't the quiet of an empty house, but the heavy, pressurized hush of a space where people are actively pretending you don't exist. For the past 14 months, that silence has been my address. I live in the basement of a $6.2 million architectural marvel in the hills of Seattle. Concrete walls, floor-to-ceiling glass, and sharp angles that look beautiful in design magazines but leave nowhere for warmth to settle. My son Marcus calls it the lower garden suite. Elena, his wife, calls it a temporary accommodation until my hip heals. I call it what it is: a polished tomb. The air down here always smells faintly of wet earth and the ozone from the heavy-duty air purifiers pumping constantly in the corners. The dampness settles into my joints, a dull, throbbing ache that wakes me long before the gray dawn filters through the high, narrow windows. Outside, the perpetual Seattle rain streaks the glass like tears on a dirty face. Inside, I sit at a small metal desk with a heavy titanium pen, a retirement gift from my late wife, Evelyn. I am 74 years old. For 4 decades, I was a forensic accountant. I tracked vanishing millions through offshore shell companies and labyrinthine corporate structures. I made a career out of finding the lies people bury in numbers. I just never expected to apply those skills to my own flesh and blood. I open the leather-bound notebook on my desk. I call it the ledger. I trace my thumb over the date written in neat, precise ink. October 14th. I record the loss of my grandfather's gold pocket watch. Before that, on September 2nd, it was a set of sterling silver cufflinks. Small things. Quiet disappearances. Elena always blames the movers or my own supposedly failing memory. But a forensic accountant doesn't deal in coincidences. A missing watch is a mistake. A missing watch, a disappeared silver service set, and a suddenly appearing abstract sculpture in the downstairs foyer is a pattern. I push away from the desk. The cold concrete floor bites through the soles of my slippers. I make my way up the floating glass staircase, gripping the brushed steel handrail tight. Every step shoots a splinter of pain up my right side. The main floor is a sterile expanse of white marble and imported dark wood. It feels less like a home and more like a high-end medical clinic waiting room. The smart fridge hums a low synthetic pitch. I pour a cup of leftover coffee from the thermal carafe. It tastes stale and burnt, leaving a bitter ash coating on my tongue. "Good morning, Arthur." I didn't startle, though I didn't hear her approach. Elena stands in the doorway of the kitchen, dressed in designer activewear that has never seen the inside of a gym. She holds a green smoothie, her nails painted a flawless, bloodless nude. "Good morning, Elena." She offers a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Skin tightens around her mouth. "Did you sleep well? Marcus thought he heard you moving around at 3 in the morning. You know he had a big pitch today. He needs his rest." The translation is effortless. "Stop making noise in your cage." "I'll try to walk lighter," I offer, keeping my voice utterly flat. She taps her manicured fingernails against her glass. "There's a doctor's appointment I scheduled for you next Thursday. A neurological evaluation. Just a baseline check. We're noting you've been a bit forgetful lately." I look at her. Really look at her. The practiced concern masking the calculation in her pale blue eyes. "I'm perfectly fine, Elena. It's just a precaution." She turns on her heels, the rubber of her expensive sneakers squeaking sharply against the marble. I took my bitter coffee back down into the dark damp of the basement. I sat at my desk, opened my secure tablet, and logged into my primary banking portal. It's a weekly ritual born of the paranoia that set in after the pocket watch disappeared. Marcus has had limited power of attorney since my hip replacement surgery, a temporary measure I agreed to when the pain medication made it difficult to focus on screens. It was supposed to be for paying utility bills and managing the property taxes on my old home. I pull up the transaction history. I scroll past the grocery bills, the pharmacy charges, the routine expenses. Then I see it. A freezing sensation floods my chest, sharp and absolute. The temperature in the room doesn't drop, but a deep frost settles in my lungs. I stopped breathing. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred, forced my eyes to refocus, and looked again. Transfer out, $85,000. The account it was drained from wasn't my general checking. It wasn't my retirement portfolio. It was the Evelyn Memorial Trust, a fund I had spent the last 3 years meticulously building to donate to the pediatric oncology ward that took care of my wife during her final agonizing months. It was sacred ground, untouchable money. To take from it wasn't just theft. It was desecrated. I traced the routing number of the destination account. It's a corporate LLC. The name matches the manufacturer of the massive custom-built imported Italian kitchen Marcus had installed 3 weeks ago. My son didn't just steal from me. He cannibalized his dead mother's legacy to buy marble countertops. A metallic tang floods my mouth. Adrenaline. It tastes like old pennies and raw copper. My hands tremble not from age, but from a rage so pure and concentrated it feels like a physical weight behind my ribs. I don't scream. I don't storm downstairs and demand answers. Outbursts are for people who want apologies. I don't want an apology. I wait. Hours bleed into the evening. The rain intensifies, drumming a heavy, relentless rhythm against the basement glass. At 11:30, the house goes quiet. The smart lights dim to a soft ambient glow. I leave my room and climb the glass stairs, moving with a silence I haven't practiced since my days of walking through the quiet houses of sleeping targets during fraud raids. I pause in the shadows of the hallway outside Marcus's home office. The door is cracked open an inch. A sliver of warm yellow light cuts across the dark hardwood floor. I hear the clinking of ice against crystal. Marcus pours a drink. "It's done," Marcus murmured. His voice sounds thin, strained. "Did the transfer clear?" Elena asks. The rustle of silk fabric follows her words. "Yes. But it's risky, El. If he checks the trust account..." "He won't check it," Elena dismissed, her tone dripping with casual disdain. "He barely knows how to work the tablet I bought him. He spends all day staring at the wall down there. Besides, it doesn't matter if he does find out. Not after next week." A heavy pause. The ice clinks again. "You talked to Dr. Eris?" Marcus asked. 10 grand cash under the table," Elena said smoothly. "Eris will write the evaluation. Early onset dementia, severe cognitive decline. With the power of attorney already in place, the judge will grant full medical conservatorship without blinking. He won't have the legal standing to challenge a single financial decision we make. We can liquidate the rest of his portfolio to cover the Series B funding gap." I stand perfectly still in the dark. The splinters of pain in my hip vanish, drowned out by the roaring in my ears. "He's my father, El," Marcus whispered. "It isn't a protest. It's a pathetic attempt to absolve himself. And he's a dinosaur sitting on $4 million while your company drowns," she replied, her voice turning hard. "Do you want to lose this house, Marcus? Do you want to explain to the board why we're bankrupt? He doesn't need the money. He's a ghost taking up space. They aren't just stealing from me. They are planning to erase me. Legally, medically, financially. They want to trap me in my own body, strip away my autonomy, and feed my life's work into the furnace of their own failures." I stepped back from the door, my breathing shallow and completely silent. I retreat down the glass stairs, descending back into the damp, ozone-scented air of the basement. I sit back down at the metal desk. The heavy titanium pen feels cold and perfectly balanced in my hand. I open the leather ledger. I turn past the stolen pocket watch, past the missing cufflinks, past the plundered memorial trust. I flip to a fresh blank page. At 74, I thought my life was a closed book, a quiet winding down of the clock. But sitting in the dark of my son's basement, listening to the rain beat against the glass, I realize they have made a catastrophic miscalculation. They think I am a ghost. They are about to find out exactly what kind of haunting a forensic accountant can engineer. The transformation from a grieving father into a predator does not happen with a scream, but with the quiet click of a closing door. The raw, metallic taste of betrayal fades into something much colder, settling into my marrow as pure, unadulterated focus. I did not sleep the rest of that night. Instead, I turned my basement cage into a war room. Using my encrypted tablet, I bypassed the superficial banking apps Elena installed for me and dived directly into the public financial filings of Marcus's tech startup Oratech. It doesn't take long to find the rot. Marcus isn't just failing, he is hemorrhaging money. The sleek corporate offices, the catered team lunches, the aggressive marketing campaigns, all built on a foundation of decaying credit. He has exhausted his venture capital. He is floating payroll on high-interest, short-term corporate debt. The kind of debt managed by men who don't send polite collection letters, but who quietly ruin your life. My son is a cornered animal. And cornered animals will chew through their own restraints to survive, even if that restraint is their father's legacy. By 6 in the morning, the rain outside my narrow windows is a torrential, blinding gray. I dress in a heavy wool overcoat, feeling the familiar comforting weight of the damp fabric against my shoulders. I leave the house before the smart fridge hums its morning cycle. I don't leave a note. The diner sits on a forgotten stretch of the Seattle waterfront, a relic of cracked red vinyl booths and flickering neon that casts a sickly, buzzing pink glow across the wet asphalt. The air inside is thick with the smell of old frying grease and stale coffee. It is a place completely devoid of the sterile, curated aesthetics of Marcus's world. It is exactly where I need to be. Elias is already waiting in the back booth. He looks exactly as he did a decade ago during our fraud unit days, a block of a man with a ruined boxer's nose and eyes that never stop scanning the exits. Arthur, Elias rumbles, wrapping his massive, calling hand around mine. The grip is anchoring. I slid into the cracked vinyl booth across from him. A waitress wordlessly drops 2 thick ceramic mugs on the table, filling them with coffee that tastes like burnt chicory and ash. I take a sip, letting the bitter heat burn the back of my throat. I slide a thick manila folder across the sticky Formica table. Elias opens it, adjusting his reading glasses. The neon light reflects off the lenses as his eyes track down the printed ledgers, the routing numbers, and the transfer for logs showing the pillaging of Evelyn's Memorial Trust. His jaw tightens. He doesn't offer pity. Pity is useless.
He's bleeding you dry?
Elias murmured, his thick finger tracing the $85,000 transfer. And he's setting up the medical conservatorship to lock the vault door behind him. Elena paid a doctor $10,000 in cash for a fraudulent diagnosis of severe dementia, I replied, my voice completely devoid of inflection. They plan to execute the medical takeover next Thursday. Elias closes the folder, resting his heavy forearms on the table. You know the protocol, Artie. We go to Adult Protective Services. We file a police report. This is felony wire fraud and elder abuse. They can have him in handcuffs by tomorrow afternoon.
No.
I hold his gaze, the clatter of silverware from the kitchen acting as our only soundtrack. If the police intervene now, it gets tied up in a messy domestic dispute. Elena will claim I willingly transferred the money and simply forgot due to my declining mental state. The forged medical evaluation will muddy the waters. They might even walk. Elias leans back, the vinyl squeaking under his weight. He knows that look in my eyes. He's seen it 100 times when we cornered embezzlers. So what's the play? A controlled demolition, I state. I need you to open a ghost account through the old channels. Completely untraceable to my current portfolio. I am going to quietly transfer the remaining liquid assets out of his reach. But I need to stay in that house just a little longer. I need to gather the physical evidence of his corporate debt, the proof of his insolvency, to ensure when I spring the trap, the jaws lock tight. You're playing with fire staying under that roof, Elias warns, tapping the folder. If they realize you know, they see what they want to see, I interrupted softly. Fading ghost taking up space. Before noon, I secure my extraction point. It's a modest 1-bedroom apartment in a brick building across the city. The floors are scuffed hardwood, the radiator hisses a comforting warmth, and the air smells cleanly of bleach and fresh paint. I slide the heavy brass key into the cheap but solid deadbolt, locking the door behind me. I stand in the center of the empty room, listening to the muffled sounds of traffic below. It is small. It is plain, but the silence here belongs to me. Over the next 3 days, my life becomes a masterclass in psychological camouflage. I return to the glass mansion. I move a fraction slower. I allow my hands to tremble slightly when reaching for a coffee cup. I asked Elena the same question twice in 1 hour, watching the barely concealed smirk of triumph pulling at the corners of her bloodless mouth. Elena, did I receive a letter from the bank? I asked on Tuesday evening, staring blankly at the marble island. She doesn't even look up from her tablet. No, Arthur. You asked me that this morning. Remember, we talked about this. Your memory is just slipping a little. Her tone is the weaponized sweetness used on a slow child.
Right.
Yes.
Slipping, I mutter, turning away so she cannot see the cold, unblinking clarity in my eyes. Every time they leave the house, I work. I moved critical documents, my encrypted hard drives, and Evelyn's remaining jewelry out in my coat pockets, dropping them off at the safe house. I leave my leather briefcase in the basement, exactly where it always sits. But I employ a trick from my field days, a single silver hair plucked from my own head, laid across the zipper seat. On Wednesday night, I return from a walk to find the hair gone. Elena has been searching my things. She is looking for the financial tokens, the account numbers, ensuring the cage is secure before they lock it permanently. The violation makes my skin crawl, but it confirms my timeline. The trap is closing. Marcus finds me in the kitchen later that evening. He wears a custom-tailored suit that costs more than my first car, but his skin is sallow, his eyes rimmed in exhausted, bruised purple. He reeks of expensive scotch and cheap panic. Dad, Marcus starts forcing a bright plastic smile. We're hosting a small networking gala here tomorrow night. Some big investors. It's going to be pretty loud. Elena and I thought it might be best if you stayed down in the suite. Get some rest. We don't want you getting confused with all the people. He doesn't want his investors seeing the ghost in the basement. He doesn't want the visual reminder of the man he is actively destroying. I look at my son. I try to find the boy I taught to ride a bicycle in the driveway of our old home. The boy who cried when he scraped his knee. There is nothing left of him. The hollow, desperate man standing in front of me is a stranger wearing my surname. Of course, Marcus, I offer a weak, compliant nod, letting my shoulders slump. I'll stay out of your way. I wouldn't want to ruin your big night. Relief washes over his exhausted features. He pats my shoulder, a condescending, weightless touch. Thanks, Dad. You're the best. He turns and walks away, the leather of his expensive shoes squeaking against the pristine marble. I watch him go, feeling the cold titanium of Evelyn's pen resting heavily in my pocket. Marcus thinks tomorrow night is a coronation. He thinks he will parade his stolen wealth in front of his investors and secure his future while I sit quietly in the dark, waiting for my mind to be erased. But a gala is loud. A gala is chaotic. And while my son is busy pouring champagne paid for with his mother's memorial fund, his home office upstairs will be entirely unguarded. The bass from the rented sound system beats against the soles of my shoes, vibrating up through the imported marble of the main floor. It is Thursday night. The gala is at its peak. I stand near the catering station, an island of stillness in a sea of aggressive networking. The air is thick with the competing scents of roasted garlic crustiness, expensive bergamot cologne, and the sharp tang of gin. I hold a flute of cloying, overly sweet champagne that someone shoved into my hand 20 minutes ago. I haven't taken a sip. Elena materializes from the crowd, her arm linking through mine with the sudden trapping force of a steel snare. Her fingernails dig painfully through the wool of my cardigan. Richard, I want you to meet Marcus's father, Arthur, Elena sings, turning me toward a silver-haired man in a bespoke tuxedo. The investors. Her smile is radiant, entirely manufactured, displaying a row of blindingly white teeth. Arthur lives with us now. We just couldn't bear the thought of him being alone in some facility. Family is everything to Marcus. Richard smiles warmly, extending a hand. A pleasure, Arthur. You have a wonderful son. He's building quite the empire here. He certainly is building something, I replied. My voice is mild, perfectly calibrated to sound like the doddering, grateful patriarch they need me to be. Elena's grip tightens into a bruised pinch on my bicep. She pulled me back slightly. Arthur gets tired so easily these days, she whispered to Richard, her tone dropping into a theatrically tragic register. The crowds overwhelmed him. We're going to get him tucked into bed. Of course, of course. Rest well, sir, Richard nodded, already turning back to the bar. Elena herds me toward the glass staircase leading to the basement. Once we are out of sight of the guests, the radiant smile vanishes, leaving her face as hard and blank as a porcelain plate. She doesn't speak. She just points down into the darkness. I descend the stairs slowly, leaning heavily on the handrail, playing the part of the fading ghost. I reached the bottom, walked into my room, and closed the door with a loud, audible click. Then I wait. I sat in the dark for exactly 70 minutes. I listen as the volume of the party above swells from a polite hum to a chaotic, alcohol-fueled roar. The thud of the music becomes a physical weight pressing down on the concrete ceiling. Laughter echoes sharply through the ventilation grate. This is the blinding light Marcus wanted to hide me from. But light casts shadows and noise provides cover. I stand up. The feigned weakness evaporates from my posture. I pulled a pair of thin latex gloves from my pocket and snapped them over my fingers. I slipped out of my basement room, bypassing the main glass staircase entirely. Instead, I used the narrow utility stairs in the back, the ones meant for the caterers and the cleaning staff. The climb burns my hip, a sharp, grinding agony that threatens to buckle my knee, but I force the pain into a tight, ignored box at the back of my mind. I reach the second floor. The hallway is cloaked in deep shadow, completely deserted. All the guests are contained on the main floor and the outdoor terraces. I glide down the corridor, my rubber-soled slippers making absolutely no sound against the thick plush carpet. I reached Marcus's home office. The door is locked. A heavy digital keypad glows ominously above the brass handle. I don't need to guess the code. A forensic accountant studies human behavior as much as numbers. Narcissists and desperate men do not invent complex security measures, they use what anchors them. Yesterday, while feigning confusion in the kitchen, I watched Marcus punch the code into the security panel by the garage. I pressed the numbers. 1, 0. October 14th, the day his tech startup received its very first round of seed funding. The day he thought he became a god. The lock clicks green. A heavy door swings open on silent hinges. I step inside and close the door, instantly shutting out the thumping bass from downstairs. The office smells of expensive leather, ozone from the high-end server tower in the corner, and the stale sweat of a man spending his nights gripped by panic. I do not turn on the overhead lights. Instead, I pulled a small blue-tinted LED pen light from my pocket and clicked it on. The narrow beam cuts through the darkness, illuminating the sleek mahogany desk. Outwardly, the room is immaculate, but a desperate man's chaos is always hidden in the drawers. I slide open the bottom right filing cabinet. It is a rat's nest of crumpled invoices, past due notices, and threatening letters from venture capital firms threatening to pull their board seats. It's damning, but it's not what I'm looking for. I need the kill shot. I need the mechanism of his survival. My light sweeps the floor underneath the desk. There, bolted to the baseboard, is a small biometric safe. I kneel, the pain in my hip flaring into a white-hot spike. A biometric scanner requires a fingerprint, but Marcus is sloppy. The safe has a manual override keyhole tucked beneath a rubber flap. I know exactly where he keeps his backup keys. When he was 7, he hid his stolen candy in the toe of his winter boots. At 42, his habits haven't evolved. I sweep my light into the open closet, reaching into the toe of a scuffed, out-of-season snowboarding boot. My fingers brush cold metal. I slide the key into the safe. It turns with a heavy, satisfying thunk. I pulled out a thick stack of legal documents, resting them on the carpet. The blue light washes over the crisp, heavy stock paper. I begin to read. My breathing stops. The ambient noise of the party downstairs fades into absolute ringing silence. The document in my hands is a promissory note, a high-risk, short-term collateralized loan from a private equity firm that operates in the gray spaces of the law. The principal amount is $1.5 million. But it's not the amount that freezes the blood in my veins. It is the collateral. Marcus hasn't just concluded his worthless tech company. He has sold his portfolio. He has rented the deed to the Victorian house Evelyn and I bought 40 years ago, the house I am currently renting out to a young family. I flip to the final page. The signature line. There it is. My name. Arthur James Pendleton. I trace my gloved finger over the ink. It is a forgery, but it is the golden detail that tells the entire tragic story of my son. He has tried to imitate the sharp looping cursive I have used to sign tax audits for 40 years. But his hand was shaking. I can see the heavy indented groove pressed into the paper where the pen dug too deeply into the A. He paused at the top of the loop, the ink bleeding slightly into the fiber of the page, revealing his hesitation. His fear. He didn't just steal my cash. He forged my identity to leverage everything I built over a lifetime of honest work, handling it over to financial predators. If his startup defaults, and it will within weeks, the equity firm won't just bankrupt Marcus. They will seize my home. They will liquidate my retirement. I will be thrown onto the street, destitute, with my name attached to a massive corporate default. A new emotion layers itself over the cold, calculated rage. Disgust. A profound, sickening revulsion. He has sold my past and he has sold my future, all to buy a few more months of pretending to be a billionaire in front of people sipping cheap champagne downstairs. I pulled my encrypted smartphone from my pocket. Moving with rapid mechanical precision, I photograph every single page of the promissory note. I photographed the forged signature from 3 different angles, capturing the indented hesitation in the ink. I photographed the notary stamp, another purchased lie. I placed the documents exactly as I found them. I lock the safe. I return the key to the toe of the boot. I wipe the desk down with my sleeve, although my gloves leave no prints. I slipped out of the office, relocking the keypad behind me. The hallway is still empty. As I descend the narrow utility stairs back to the basement, the thudding bass of the party hits me again. The vibration feels different now. It doesn't feel like a celebration. It feels like the ticking of a massive, unavoidable bomb. I sit at my metal desk in the dark, the blue light of my phone illuminating my face as the encrypted files uploaded directly to Elias's secure server. They plan to declare me incompetent next Thursday. They think they have a week to lock me away and assume total control of the ashes they've made of my life. They are wrong. Thursday is a lifetime away. I am going to burn Marcus's empire to the ground by Monday morning. The encrypted files finished uploading at 3:14 in the morning, their digital weight sealing my son's fate in the silence of the basement. I did not sleep, watching the gray dawn crawl over the wet concrete of the window well, knowing I had 48 hours before the trap closed. But desperate men do not keep schedules. At 7 in the morning, the heavy glass door at the top of the stairs clicked open. Footsteps descended, rapid and completely devoid of their usual stealth. The air flowing down from the main floor carried the sour, acidic stench of industrial floor wax and stale wine, the smell of a panic cleaning after a party. I sat in my metal chair, hands folded over the leather ledger as Marcus and Elena rounded the landing. Marcus looked horrific. The bespoke tuxedo was gone, replaced by a wrinkled cashmere sweater. His skin was the color of old parchment, and a slight tremor vibrated through his hands. Elena stood half a step in front of him, her posture rigid, clutching a glossy trifold brochure. "Arthur, we need to have a serious conversation," Elena announced, her voice pitched in that weaponized synthetic sweetness. "Is something wrong?" I asked, keeping my tone perfectly hollow. Marcus rubbed a trembling hand over his jaw, avoiding my eyes entirely. He stared at the concrete wall just to the left of my head. "The gala last night. It was a success, Dad. But the investors, they want to push the timeline up. We're facing an emergency third-party audit of the company on Monday morning. They are combing through everything." He swallowed hard. The lie was so heavy it was physically choking him. He wasn't worried about an audit of his company. He was disenchanted they would trace his fraudulent collateral loans back to my accounts. He needed me legally neutralized before the weekend ended. Elena stepped forward, dropping the glossy brochure onto my desk.
Oak Haven Restorative Care.
The cover features a stock photo of a smiling nurse wheeling an elderly man through a sunlit garden. The reality of those state-run overflow facilities was linoleum, the smell of boiled cabbage, and chemical restraints. "We've consulted with Dr. Eris," Elena explained, tapping her manicured nail against the smiling nurse. "Given your rapid cognition decline, he strongly advised we move you into a specialized environment immediately. For your own safety. We've already secured a room. Transport is coming at noon. Today." They were throwing me away today. A fascinating mixture of emotions bloomed in my chest. A profound, suffocating grief for the boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street, warring immediately with a cold, absolute disgust for the coward standing in my basement. And beneath both, the thrumming, electric hum of perfect calculation. They expected tears. They expected me to beg, to scream, to demand answers. A fight will validate their narrative. It would prove I was erratic, confused, using their control. I looked at the brochure. I reached out and gently straightened it on the desk. "I see," I murmured, my voice a dry whisper. "If Dr. Eris believes it is necessary, then I suppose it is for the best." The silence in the basement became deafening. Marcus finally looked at me, his bloodshot eyes widening in absolute shock. Elena's synthetic smile faltered, her perfectly painted lips parting in confusion. I had denied them the absolution of an argument. I had simply surrendered. "I'll help you pack a bag, Dad," Marcus stammered, the guilt finally fracturing his voice. "There's no need," I replied, standing up with deliberate slowness. "I don't require much. Just a few sweaters and my toiletries." Elena moved toward my small bedside table, desperate to regain control of the situation. She grabbed a plastic garbage bag she had brought down with her and began haphazardly shoving my folded shirts into it. She reached for the nightstand. My heart stopped. She picked up the silver-framed photograph of Evelyn on our wedding day. She didn't look at it. She didn't wrap it. She simply tossed it into a cardboard box labeled donations that she had kicked against the wall. The sound of the glass shattering against a discarded brass belt buckle cracked through the room like a gunshot. I didn't yell. I walked over to the donation box, ignoring the grinding agony in my hip. I reached into the dark cardboard and pulled the frame out. The glass was spiderwebbed, a jagged shard obscuring Evelyn's smiling eyes. I carefully pulled the loose sliver of glass free. It sliced deep into the pad of my thumb. The hot metallic taste of copper flooded my mouth as the blood welled up, bright crimson against the silver frame. I didn't wipe it away. I slipped the frame into the inner pocket of my heavy wool overcoat. "I won't need the medical transport at noon," I stated, turning back to them. I pressed my bleeding thumb against the lining of my pocket. "I called a private taxi an hour ago. It should be waiting at the front gate." "Arthur, you can't go alone, the facility requires," Elena began, her voice rising in shrill panic. "I will check myself in," I cut her off. The volume of my voice didn't rise, but the absolute crushing density of the tone froze her in place. "I am leaving your home, Elena. You have achieved your goal. Do not push me." Marcus shrank back. For a fraction of a second, the fog of his desperation lifted, and he recognized the forensic accountant who used to dismantle criminal enterprises before dinner. But the moment passed. He was too tired, too panicked to look closely. I picked up my small leather duffel bag. It was mostly empty, as everything of value was already sitting in a secure apartment across the city. I walked up the glass stairs for the very last time. The house was dead quiet. The catering crew had stripped the main floor bare, leaving nothing but the cold, white marble and the lingering smell of expensive mistakes. I opened the massive oak front door. The damp, frigid Seattle air hit my face, smelling of pine needles and rain-slicked asphalt. A yellow taxi idled in the circular driveway, exhaust pluming in the gray morning light. "Dad." Marcus stood in the doorway, wrapping his arms around his own torso. He looked small. He took a hesitant step forward, raising an arm as if to embrace me. A final pathetic attempt to convince himself he was a good son, sending his father away for the right reasons. I stepped backward, the gravel crunching loudly beneath my Oxford shoes. "Goodbye, Marcus." I turned, opened the heavy door of the cab, and slid onto the cracked vinyl seat. "Oak Haven Restorative Care," I included the driver loudly enough for Marcus to hear. the car pulled away. I watched my son shrink in the rearview mirror until the iron gates swung shut, erasing him from my view. 2 blocks down the winding hillside road, I tapped the plexiglass partition. Change of destination. Take me to the brick building on 4th and Mercer. The driver merely grunted, cranking the steering wheel. 30 minutes later, I stood in front of the heavy wooden door of apartment 3B. I slid the brass key into the lock. It turned with a solid metallic chunk. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The morning sun had broken through the cloud cover, casting thick golden rectangles of light across the scuffed hardwood floor. There was no hum of a smart fridge. There was no smell of ozone or floor wax. There was only the faint, clean scent of bleach and the absolute perfect silence of freedom. I dropped the leather duffel bag. I pulled the heavy titanium pen from my pocket and placed it on the small kitchen counter. Then I pulled out my encrypted smartphone. I dialed a secure 12-digit number. It rang exactly once. "It's Elias." "I'm out," I said, my voice completely steady. I walked toward the window, looking down at the wet city streets below. I am in the safe house. The timeline accelerated. They tried to commit me this morning. Elias exhaled a sharp, angry breath. "Are you safe?" "I am a ghost," I confirmed. "Do you have the photographs of the promissory note and the forged signatures?" "Received and verified," Elias rumbled, the sound of a keyboard clacking aggressively in the background. "Artie, this collateral loan is a federal violation. Once I submit this to the fraud division at the bank, the automated systems will lock down everything attached to his name. Checking, savings, corporate accounts, credit lines. It's a complete financial embargo." "And the equity firm?" I asked, watching a pigeon land on the brick sill outside my window. "They get an automated alert that their collateral is under active fraud investigation. They will panic. They will call in his entire principal loan immediately. He won't have a single cent to pay them." Elias paused, the clacking of the keyboard stopped. "You understand what this means, my friend. He lost the house. He lost the company. He faces minimum 10 years for the forgery." I pressed my bandaged thumb against the glass of the window. The dull throb was a reminder of the shattered frame in my pocket, the desecrated trust, the basement cage. "Prime the guillotine, Elias. Drop it." I ended the call. I put the phone face down on the counter. Somewhere across the city, digital gates were slamming shut. Accounts were frozen. The foundation of my son's life was quietly, violently fracturing, and he had absolutely no idea the ground was about to open up and swallow him whole. The first 48 hours of my new life were defined by the staggering absolute luxury of making my own tea. I bought a dented metal kettle from a thrift store down the street. It screeched a high, shrill note when the water finally boiled, a sound that would have earned me a sharp reprimand in Marcus's basement. Here in the quiet solitude of my apartment, it was a symphony. I poured the steaming water over cheap, bitter black tea leaves, letting the sharp tang of citrus and bergamot fill the small kitchen. The heat of the ceramic mug soaked into my stiff, aching knuckles. I sat by the window, breathing in the scent of hot dust rising from the cast iron radiator, and watched the Seattle rain wash the streets below. Peace is a strange garment when you haven't worn it in over a year. It feels heavy at first, almost uncomfortable in its stillness. But as Tuesday bled into Wednesday, the phantom tension in my shoulders finally dissolved. I was no longer a ghost haunting the edges of my son's life. I was Arthur Pendleton again. But across the city, the invisible digital guillotine had dropped. On Thursday afternoon, my encrypted burner phone vibrated against the wooden table, flashing a single green light. I answered it without taking my eyes off the gray clouds outside. "The dominoes are falling, Artie," Elias rumbled, the heavy satisfaction in his voice unmistakable over the secure line. "Fraud embargo engaged across all major networks by Tuesday morning. It's a complete systemic lockout." I took a slow sip of my tea, the astringent liquid biting pleasantly at the back of my throat. "Tell me about the collateral." "The private equity firm received the federal flag on the forged promissory note," Elias confirmed, the rustle of paper echoing on his end. "They panicked. They immediately attempted to execute a margin call, demanding the full $1.5 million back in cash. When they pinged Marcus's corporate accounts, they hit the freeze. Everything bounced. A forensic accountant knows exactly what a systemic financial freeze looks like from the inside. It is not a slow leak. It is a violent, immediate cardiac arrest of a company's entire operational body. Marcus's smart cards would be declined at coffee shops. His payroll system would reject the bi-weekly employee transfers. The cloud servers hosting his startup software would shut down for non-payment, locking his clients out. Did he try to find me at Oakhaven? I asked, my voice flat. He called them Wednesday night, Elias replied. When the administrator informed him you never arrived, he filed a missing persons report with the local precinct. The police dropped it 10 minutes later when my contacts at the fraud division intercepted the file and flagged him as an active suspect in a federal financial crime. He has no moves left, Artie. The predators are tearing his empire apart as we speak. Keep the accounts frozen, I instructed, ending the call. I walked over to the small bookshelf where I had placed Evelyn's photograph. I hadn't replaced the shattered glass. The silver frame was dented, holding the memory of her smile surrounded by jagged, broken edges. It was an ugly thing now, but it was honest. By Friday evening, the skies opened up into a torrential, freezing downpour. I was sitting in my armchair, listening to the muffled drone of a local jazz station on my battery-operated radio when the heavy brass buzzer on my wall screamed. A sharp spike of adrenaline hit my bloodstream, tasting like raw copper and old iron. I didn't press the intercom. I stood up, walked to the heavy wooden door of my apartment, and waited in the shadow of the narrow hallway. 5 minutes passed. Then the heavy, frantic thud of footsteps echoed up the wooden stairwell. Desperate people do not care about locked lobby doors. They wait in the rain until a neighbor leaves, and they slip inside like water through a cracked foundation. Fists hammered against my door. The wood rattled in its frame. Dad, I know you're in there. Open the damn door. Marcus. His voice was cracked, raw, tearing at the edges from pure, unadulterated terror. I leaned forward, pressing my eye against the convex glass of the cheap brass peephole. The fisheye lens distorted the hallway, curving the peeling wallpaper, but the image of my son was agonizingly clear. He was soaked. The expensive, pale cashmere sweater he wore was plastered to his skin, dark and heavy with rain. His hair was plastered to his forehead. He was leaning his entire body weight against my door, smearing a mixture of rain, sweat, and the dirt from the streets against the painted wood. Elena stood a few feet behind him, her designer trench coat dripping onto the linoleum. Her flawless, bloodless makeup was running down her cheeks in dark, smeared tracks. The smell of wet wool and the cloying, rotting sweetness of Elena's expensive perfume seeped through the gap under the door. Arthur, please, Elena shrieked, dropping the weaponized sweetness entirely. Her voice was shrill, panicked, the sound of a rat cornered by a terrier. The police came to the house. They took our computers, opened the door. Marcus pounded again, his knuckles leaving faint red smears of blood against the brass numbering of my apartment. That was the golden detail. The billionaire tech genius, reduced to bleeding knuckles on a $50 door in a working-class neighborhood. Dad, they froze everything, Marcus sobbed, pressing his face against the wood. The equity firm is threatening to seize the house by Monday. The employees walked out. They say I forged your name. I didn't mean to. I swear it was just a bridge loan. You have to call the bank. You have to tell them you authorized it. He still believed he could manipulate the ghost. He still thought the fading old man in the basement could be bullied into saving him. I placed my palm flat against the cold, solid wood of the door. I didn't unlock the deadbolt. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke with the quiet, devastating clarity of a judge reading a terminal sentence. I have authorized nothing. The frantic pounding stopped instantly. On the other side of the door, Marcus froze, pressing his ear desperately against the wood to catch my low voice. I know about the promissory note, Marcus, I continued, the coldness in my chest radiating outward, turning my voice to ice. I know about the $10,000 you paid Dr. Aris to falsify my medical records. I know about the $85,000 you drained from your mother's memorial trust to buy kitchen counters. A choked, wheezing gasp filtered through the door. Marcus stumbled backward. Elena let out a sharp, pathetic whimper. How? Marcus whispered, the realization finally breaking through the fog of his panic. How did you? I spent 40 years dismantling men far smarter than you, I murmured, staring at his distorted, horrified face through the peephole. You thought I was a ghost taking up space. You were wrong. I was taking inventory. You planned this, Elena hissed, her voice vibrating with venom, stepping closer to the door. You set us up. You're going to lose the house too. They'll take your collateral. The collateral is secured under an active fraud investigation, I corrected her softly, dealing the final lethal blow to their hopes. The equity firm cannot touch my assets. They can only touch yours. And when the federal prosecutors finish with the forgery charges, Marcus will have nothing left to seize. Dad, please. Marcus dropped to his knees in the hallway. I watched his wet hands claw uselessly at the bottom of my doorframe. I'm your son. You can't do this to me. I'll go to prison. The grief flared up one last time, a brief sharp ache in the hollow of my chest. He was my son. But the man bleeding on my welcome mat had died the moment he signed his mother's legacy away. You did this to yourself, I answered, stepping back from the peephole. I turned my back to the door, letting his muffled, wretched, sobbing echo into the hallway. I walked back into my small kitchen. The tea had gone cold. I poured it down the sink, the dark liquid swirling into the drain. My burner phone lit up again. An encrypted email notification from Elias. I opened it. Attached was a formal legal summons. The bank's fraud division, alongside the federal investigators, had secured an emergency deposition for Monday morning. All parties were compelled to attend. I looked at the shattered silver frame on the shelf. The ghost was gone. The forensic accountant was going to court. The silence of a federal deposition room is distinctly different from the silence of my son's basement. The basement was heavy, pressurized by the secrets kept in the dark. This room is brilliantly lit, clinical, and sterile. It is the quiet of an operating theater in the seconds before the surgeon makes the first irreversible incision. I sit at a massive oak conference table on the 12th floor of the federal building. The air smells faintly of lemon disinfectant and the sharp static ozone from the court reporter's stenography machine. Rain lashes against the tempered glass of the high-rise windows, a violent Seattle storm hammering the city, but inside the temperature is perfectly regulated. Cold. Unforgiving. Elias sits to my left, an immovable mountain in a dark suit. To my right sits Vance, the lead prosecutor for the Federal Financial Crimes Division. At precisely 9 in the morning, the heavy wooden door swings open. Marcus enters. He does not look like a tech visionary. He does not look like a CEO. The bespoke tailoring is gone, replaced by an ill-fitting, off-the-rack gray suit that hangs loosely from his frame. His skin is a waxy, translucent gray. The hollows beneath his eyes look like bruises. Elena follows him, but the choreography of their entrance is instantly revealing. She does not walk beside him. She walks 3 paces behind, her posture rigid. She has brought her own legal counsel. They take their seats across from me. The leather chairs squeak under their weight. Marcus stares at the polished oak table, his hands folded in his lap, trembling so violently his shoulders vibrate. Elena refuses to look at me. She stares strictly at the blank wall above my head. Let the record reflect the presence of all subpoenaed parties, Vance begins, his voice carrying the dry, mechanical rhythm of the legal system. He outlines the parameters of the investigation. Wire fraud. Forgery. Elder financial abuse. The attempted defrauding of a private equity firm. Each federal statute sounds like a nail being driven into thick wood. Marcus shrinks lower in his chair with every syllable. Mr. Pendleton, Vance turns to me, gesturing with an open palm. You initiated the freeze on your assets. Would you like to present the ledger for the record? I would. I reach into my inner coat pocket. I pull out the leather-bound notebook. I place it on the oak table. I do not rush. I uncap the heavy titanium pen Evelyn gave me for my retirement. The metal is perfectly cold against my knuckles. I open to the first page. September 2nd. 1 set of sterling silver cufflinks. Value $1,200. My voice is a low, steady baritone. It does not shake. October 14th. One antique gold pocket watch. Value $4,000. Marcus closes his eyes. A single ragged breath escapes his lips. These were items misappropriated from my personal effects while I was under the medical care of my son. I continue turning the page. The rustle of the paper echoes sharply, but the physical theft was merely the prologue. On November 3rd, an unauthorized wire transfer was executed from the Evelyn Memorial Trust. I slide the bank printout across the table. $85,000. Drained from a pediatric oncology charity fund to pay an Italian cabinet manufacturer. Arthur, please, Marcus whispers. It is a broken, hollow sound. He looks up, his eyes glassy and pleading. Don't do this. Address the room, Mr. Pendleton, Vance instructs sharply, shutting Marcus down. I look directly into my son's eyes. There is no anger left in me. The rage burned out days ago, leaving only the cold, hard ash of reality. On Thursday, during a gala funded by my stolen assets, I accessed Marcus Pendleton's home office. I state to the room, though I never break eye contact with my son. I slide the high-resolution photographs of the promissory note across the polished oak. I discovered a collateralized loan agreement for $1.5 million. It leveraged my real estate portfolio and my retirement accounts. I point the tip of the titanium pen at the final photograph. The zoomed-in image of the signature line. That is my name. But that is not my hand. The hesitation in the loop of the A, the heavy pressure of a nervous grip. It is a forgery. My son sold my past and attempted to sell my future to buy himself a few more months of a dying illusion. The stenographer's machine clicks in rapid staccato bursts, immortalizing the destruction of Marcus's life into the public record. My client had no knowledge of the forged collateral. A sharp voice interrupts. It is Elena's lawyer. He slides a manila envelope across the table toward the federal prosecutor. Marcus's head snaps to the right, staring at his wife in absolute uncomprehending horror. Elena has agreed to fully cooperate with the federal investigation. Her lawyer continues smoothly, completely ignoring the devastation radiating from the man sitting next to her. We have provided all internal emails from Oratech, demonstrating that Marcus Pendleton acted unilaterally in the acquisition of the private equity loan. In exchange, my client expects full immunity from the wire fraud charges regarding the Memorial Trust. Marcus breathes the word barely audible over the hum of the fluorescent lights. What are you doing? Elena finally looks at him. The mask drops entirely. There is no synthetic sweetness. There is only the ruthless Darwinian instinct of a predator saving its own skin. I'm not going to federal prison because you couldn't build a real company, Marcus, she hisses, her voice dripping with acidic contempt. You lied to me. You said you had it under control. You lost everything. The fracture is absolute. She pushes her chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. She stands up, gathering her coat. She does not look at me. She does not look at Marcus again. She walks out of the deposition room, the heavy wooden door clicking shut behind her. Marcus is entirely alone. He tried to isolate me in a concrete basement. He tried to erase my mind, my autonomy, my legacy. Now the vacuum has collapsed inward. He is sitting in a cold room, abandoned by his wife, stripped of his stolen wealth, staring at the father he tried to destroy. Marcus breaks. He covers his face with his hands, leaning over the table. Deep, agonizing sobs tear out of his chest. It is an ugly, visceral sound. The weeping of a man watching the walls of his life crumble into dust. I just wanted it to work, he chokes out, tears dripping through his fingers onto the polished wood. I just wanted to be successful. Like you. I couldn't lose the house. I couldn't. I look at the broken man weeping across the table. I search my heart for a flicker of pity for the ghost of the boy I used to read to sleep. I find nothing. A forensic accountant cannot fix a fraudulent ledger with sentiment. You can only zero out the balance. I uncap my titanium pen one final time. I pull the federal affidavit toward me. I press the nib against the thick, heavy stock paper. I sign my name. A sharp, looping, perfect cursive. A signature my son could never quite replicate. The deposition is concluded, I state softly. I stand up, buttoning my heavy wool coat. I do not offer Marcus a handkerchief. I do not offer him absolution. I turn and walk out of the room, leaving him weeping in the cold, fluorescent light. 6 weeks later, the Seattle rain finally breaks. The morning sun cuts through the clouds, bathing my small one-bedroom apartment in a warm golden glow. The radiator hisses quietly in the corner. I sit at my small wooden table, a cup of bergamot tea steaming gently in my hand. The aftermath of a demolition is always quieter than the explosion. Marcus was formally indicted on 3 counts of federal wire fraud and 1 count of identity theft. His tech startup was seized by his creditors. The private equity firm foreclosed on the glass mansion in the hills. The basement where I slept is currently being staged for an estate auction. Elena's divorce filing was expedited through the county courts. He is awaiting sentencing in a county holding facility. I do not visit. My encrypted tablet chimes a soft, pleasant note from the kitchen counter. I open it. It is a secure message from Elias. Attached is a confirmation receipt from the bank's fraud insurance division. Transfer complete, $85,000. The Evelyn Memorial Trust has been made completely whole. I tap the screen, authorizing the immediate transfer of the entire balance to the Seattle Children's Hospital Pediatric Oncology Wing. The transaction processes instantly. A small green checkmark appears on the screen. A profound, weightless relief washes over me, settling deep into my bones. The dull ache in my hip will always be there. The memory of the betrayal will never fully fade. But the legacy is safe. Evelyn's name remains untarnished, untouched by the rot that consumed our son. I lock the tablet and set it aside. I pick up my tea, walking over to the window. The street below is coming alive. A delivery truck rattles past. A neighbor walks a golden retriever along the wet sidewalk. Normal life carrying on with an effortless, beautiful rhythm. I take a sip of the bitter tea, letting the warmth spread through my chest. At 74, I thought my story was over. I thought I was simply waiting for the clock to run out in the dark. But sitting in the sunlight of my new home, surrounded by the quiet peace I fought so ruthlessly to secure, I realized the truth. I am not a ghost. I am Arthur Pendleton, and for the first time in a very long time, I am exactly where I belong.